Hi, I'm Angie and you're watching Dante's Vaccination.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? You know, over the years of watching boxing, I've come to the conclusion that whenever you see a purse bid, it doesn't mean shit. It doesn't mean anything. When you see a purse bid between two fighters, a lot of times we see this purse bid, it usually is two big names, right? Or just a fight you really want to see. If you see purse bid in the headlines, and you don't see that both parties are very, very interested in taking this fight, then don't even get your hopes up high that this fight is going to actually happen. You see, because I've been wanting to make a video about Arthur Beterbiev versus Sullivan Barrera for quite some time. In fact, I think it was a couple weeks back that I read a headline, and the headline said Beterbiev versus Barrera. And as soon as I seen that, I was automatically about to make a video because I thought the fight was made. And then at the end of the headline, it said purse bid. And I was like, oh shit, here we go with this again. So I read the article, and just as I suspected, Barrera seemed to be the only party out of the two that wanted the fight. And Beterbiev had never even mentioned Barrera's name in that article. They had no quote with Barrera saying that he wanted the fight. He was interested in the fight. I see a cat and mouse game going on in the light heavyweight division right now. I mean, there's a lot of serious players in this division, but it's a lot of hit and miss, a lot of cat and mouse games going on. It all started with Kovalev versus Beterbiev. Let me tell you something about Kovalev, and I'll start with the good. Kovalev is such a confident fighter. Kovalev is such a real fighter that he is willing to fight someone like Arthur Beterbiev for a voluntary title defense. That says a lot about Sergey Kovalev, guys. I mean, by way of contrast, Deontay Wilder, the heavyweight champion of the world, at least the WBC heavyweight champion of the world, his mandatory, Alexander Povetkin, has been the mandatory for quite some time. And yet Deontay Wilder is already in the process of defending his title a third time against an opponent other than Alexander Povetkin. The point that I'm making is a lot of times when a mandatory is a very dangerous opponent, usually they have to wait for quite some time to get that shot at the title. But in the case with Kovalev versus Beterbiev, when you thought it would have been Kovalev who would have been possibly prolonging the Beterbiev fight, it was the contrary. It turned out it was Beterbiev that was offered the fight. Kovalev was willing to fight Beterbiev once again. Even though Kovalev didn't have to fight Beterbiev next. Why? Because Beterbiev wasn't Kovalev's mandatory. So I give a lot of credit to Sergey Kovalev. He is the best light heavyweight in the world, and he's willing to fight any and everyone. He's not making excuses why he can't fight this guy or that guy. Sergey Kovalev is one of the rare fighters that wants to prove that no one can beat him. There's only a handful of fighters out there like that today. And that's fighters like Andre Ward and Guillermo Rigondeaux. Now, and of course, there's other fighters that are willing to fight any and everyone. But I'm saying these are the fighters that are considered the best in the division, and they still want to prove that no one can beat them. Okay? You know, before I go any further, I want to tell you guys that this is proof that I practice what I preach. Because when it comes to Sergey Kovalev, This man is a straight racist. You know, and when I say straight racist, like I was telling you guys in my previous video, in a court of law, you have circumstantial evidence, and then you have direct evidence. Direct evidence is pretty self-explanatory, right? It's the smoking gun in the case. It's you being caught on camera committing the act. Or even better, a suspect making or giving a confession, right? That is direct evidence. There is direct evidence that Sergei Kovalev is a racist. It's no longer speculation, and I'm not even going to get into what he did. If you guys don't already know, you could go just search Sergei Kovalev's name on Google and you'll see exactly what he did. So anyway, with that all being said, if you guys notice, never, when I talk boxing, never do I try to say Sergei Kovalev is a bitch, he's a coward, he fights like a coward, you know, this and that. He doesn't have an inside game, he's afraid to fight on the inside, and all he is a bitch, gay this and all that. You notice I don't say anything like that about him. And the reason for that is because I can separate personal emotions from boxing logic, right? I can separate the two. Sergei Kovalev, he could be the biggest racist outside of boxing. I don't care. I'm really only here to talk about boxing. So I bring all of this up so you guys can be the same way. Let's start treating all these fighters like they are created equal, right? I mean, you have fans literally calling Andre Ward a bitch, posting comments on my videos saying, fuck you, Andre Ward, etc., etc. Meanwhile, Sergei Kovalev is posting racist tweets and he gets no fuck you, Kovalev, you're a bitch, etc., etc. Let's start treating all these fighters the same way. Moving on. So you had Beterbiev basically saying that he didn't want to fight against Kovalev, at least not right now. He wasn't ready for whatever reason. People say it's because he wanted to become a mandatory first, but I don't know if that really makes a whole lot of sense. Not too many fighters get a title shot and they turn it down and say, nah, you know what, I'm just going to wait until I become your mandatory, so you're forced to fight me then. That doesn't make any sense. I know people are using the money angle, saying, oh, he could get more money if he's a mandatory, but to me, it's not making a whole lot of sense. Okay? Now, this is my thing. Once again, I get a little annoyed when I hear reports that this fighter is being avoided by everyone, everyone's turning down a fight, etc., etc. To me, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense if everyone is turning down a fight, and yet you have two of the most relevant people in the division that are actually saying they want to fight you. How is it you still don't have an opponent? That second fighter, who also wanted to fight against Beterbiev, was Sullivan Barrera. Now, Sullivan Barrera is a very, very talented, undefeated Cuban fighter. Okay? Matter of fact, I had the privilege of watching Sullivan Barrera train and spar with Gennady Golovkin live in the flesh. I'll just tell you this. Sullivan Barrera, he did very well sparring against Gennady Golovkin. And I'll leave it at that. So when Beterbiev was looking for an opponent and there were guys that were pulling out, and Barrera all of a sudden said, hey, I'll fight you. I'll fight you for that number one spot, Beterbiev. When he said that, I waited to see how long it would take for Team Beterbiev to respond to Barrera saying that. And when Team Beterbiev never responded, I said, okay, they're not interested in fighting against Sullivan Barrera. It's not going to happen. Then, just as I suspected, all of a sudden the excuses come out. The fight has to now be in Canada, where coincidentally Sullivan Barrera, he can't fight in Canada. I guess he doesn't have a visa or whatever the case is, which obviously means now Beterbiev he no longer has to fight against Sullivan Barrera. It's funny because, once again, when I seen this, the first thing I thought is, okay, yeah, Beterbiev, they don't want to fight against Barrera. They don't want to fight against Barrera. And I said to myself, why, if his last fight wasn't in Canada, it was in the United States, why can't this fight be in the United States against Sullivan Barrera? This is what I was asking myself when I read this article. Now, coincidentally enough, Barrera, he feels the exact same way I feel. Because this is what Barrera basically had to say when he found out that Beterbiev basically passed on him. Quote, "It's kind of funny that Beterbiev's last fight was in the United States, yet he won't fight me in the US. He is an undercard fighter and isn't a big draw in Canada. Everyone knows that Bute is selling the tickets on November 28th. Pascal turned me down numerous times. Beterbiev has the same trainer as Pascal. He's not stupid. He knows what I would do to his fighters. He should just admit he doesn't like the matchup instead of putting up obstacles to prevent the fight." End quote. Now, Barrera, he hit a lot of nails in this statement that he just made recently. So clearly, Team Beterbiev, they're using that excuse of fighting on Bute's undercard, and the fight has to be in Canada. Now, that's a good alibi for Team Beterbiev, but the problem is Barrera was willing to fight Beterbiev before they had even decided where this fight was going to be at, the date, the location, and all of that. Barrera was already interested in fighting Beterbiev before that. And like I told you guys earlier, Beterbiev, he never responded to Sullivan Barrera calling him out. So that tells me that regardless if this fight was in Canada or wherever, Beterbiev wasn't too crazy to fight against Barrera. So then the promoters, they start looking for other opponents for Beterbiev. Then they start talking about the other Cuban fighter, Unieski, another very dangerous opponent. Unieski, if you guys don't recall, he just beat John Pascal but didn't get the decision, but he pretty much dominated John Pascal, in my opinion. So they talked about him briefly, and then it was reported that Unieski, for whatever reason, he pulled out of negotiations, and he wasn't interested in fighting Beterbiev. Now, I would like to get deeper into that story and find out what that was all about, but that's what the reports were. Now you have this guy by the name of Karol Marat. Hopefully I'm saying the name right, but now that's the guy that Beterbiev is looking to fight. Now, Marat is a 32-year-old with a record of 27 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, and 17 knockouts. As far as I'm concerned, this is most likely going to be the opponent unless Marat pulls out. Because when it comes to Unieski and Sullivan Barrera, the way I look at it is both of those fighters are still undefeated. Because Unieski, he beat John Pascal, so that makes those two guys the most dangerous, and they're undefeated. Now, Unieski, I guess that would be his fault for pulling out. But when it comes to Barrera, that's the fight that I wanted to see, and I think that's the fight that all of us wanted to see when it comes to the light heavyweight division. With all of these talented fighters at 175, it's a shame that we can't get a real title eliminator bout, because Barrera versus Beterbiev would have been like the final playoff game to advance to the Super Bowl, right? But we're not going to get it now. Hopefully, after Beterbiev fights his mandatory, or not his mandatory, but hopefully after Beterbiev, he fights Marat or whoever it's going to be for this eliminator bout, we get to at least see Kovalev versus Beterbiev, which would be the toughest fight for obviously both fighters. I believe Sergey Kovalev lost, twice to Beterbiev in the amateurs? So it would be a good fight. It would be a good fight. And hopefully we get to see Barrera somewhere in this mix. I mean, when you just look at all of the possibilities, if these fighters start fighting each other, man, right now in the light heavyweight division, it's looking like one of the most competitive divisions in the sport of boxing right now. I mean, you got Sergey Kovalev, Unievsky, Sullivan Barrera, Arthur Beterbiev, and then you may have pound for pound the best fighter in the world, Andre Ward, moving up to 175. That makes 175 a deep ass division. I'm on to the next one.